Hello, welcome to Lawrence County History Corner. Today I am telling the tale of a heroic Lawrence County woman. We often hear stories about people who have feats of strength in times of great tragedy, and in a case, this actually kind of happened in Lawrence County in 1925. But the story doesn't begin in 1925, it actually begins in September of 1907, 30th of September 1907 specifically, in Lawrence County, Ohio, when a couple is united in marriage. Frank Destocki and Bertha Grant were united in marriage on that date. Bertha was the daughter of Thomas Grant and Jeannie Rayburn. The family would go on to have multiple children, and in 1925 they had six surviving children. Among the children was Catherine, Oscar Arthur, Gertrude, Eileen, Walter Andrew, and Albert Edgar. Catherine was the oldest. She was born in 1908, and Oscar Arthur was born just 2 years later. It was March 12th, 1925, when a newspaper article came out and said, "Heroic mother saved baby from burning home." And that was just the beginning of the story. Mrs. Frank Destocki of 408 Mulberry Street was severely burned at 8:30 in the morning while rescuing her 9-month-old child. Well, what happened on that morning? Frank had already left for the day. He was going to work at his job at the brickyard in Colgrove. And the two oldest children, Catherine and Oscar Arthur, had already left to go to attend classes at Ironton High School, where they were attending school. Mrs. Destocki was left at home trying to get the smaller children who were going to school dressed and ready. Walter Andrew, who was only 3 years old, and Albert Edgar were the two that would be staying at home. Albert was only 9 months old at the time. The mother had started to go into another room to get more clothing when she smelled something burning. Scorching is actually the phrase used. She opened the door to discover the bedroom was ablaze. And of course, in the bedroom was little Andrew, who was little Andrew immediately began running about the house, and Bertha grabbed a hold of him and the other children and shoved them out the front door before returning to try to get her youngest baby, Albert, out of the crib. Now, Albert was only 9 months old, and she said the baby was still asleep. Albert was still asleep, but the room was ablaze. She rushed in without a concern for her own safety or health and saved the baby from the burning house, and in doing so suffered burns on her back, her breast, and both arms. Nearby neighbors, immediately hearing the cries of the children and seeing the flames, sprang into action. Mrs. Morris, who was nearby, took Mrs. Destocki into her home. A doctor, Dr. Remy, was sent for, and he arrived on scene, where he immediately saw to the injuries of both Mrs. Destocki and the baby. Although he wasn't sure about the severity of the burns on Mrs. Destocki, he hoped that they would survive. They would prove to be non-lethal. Clifford Justice, upon seeing the smoke exiting the house, he called for the fire department. And yes, there was an Ironton fire department at that time. They were very active. They were able to confine the fire to the bedroom and the kitchen alone, but the entire house suffered damage. The water badly damaged the furniture and the other property of the Destocki family, and most of the bed clothing was burned together with the household goods. Mr. Destocki, of course, was sent for, and he was able to rush home to find his children safely saved from the fire, and his wife, although burned, she ended up surviving. She and Frank would go on to have one more child, Marjorie Joan, born the 12th of February, 1928. Now, as for the baby, Albert Edgar, who was only 9 months at the time of the fire, would go on to live until 2010. And he was known by the nickname Jiggs. Sadly, the Destocki family were not immune to tragedy. In fact, just 10 years prior, the Destockis lost 3 children in 1 year. The first child they lost was a daughter, Wilma Margaret, born on the 5th of October, 1913. And she died on the 18th of February, 1915. She was just over a year old. She died from cholera infantum. Another child, a son, Harry Cornelia, who was 3 years old at the time when he died on the 1st of May, 1915, from pneumonia and measles. The last child to pass away in that year was actually left unnamed. He was a stillborn child. They did not even record if it was a male or a female, but the child passed away on the 4th of November, 1915. That is the tale of the Destocki family and the heroic Mrs. Bertha Grant Destocki and how she saved her family from a fire. I hope you enjoyed this piece of Lawrence County history, and I will see you next time.